Well, let's turn now to our next guest, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Israel's Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation, who is also the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. She joins us now. Always a pleasure talking to you, Fleur. Thanks for being with us here on Arabiya English. We're now at a stage where at least 145 countries, possibly more, as the days go by, out of 193 UN member states now recognise the state of Palestine. I mean, we're at least at a point where 75% of countries around the world do so, and more could be announced in the coming days, as I said. Does Israel pay attention to what the majority of people in the world think? And does Israel care, do you think?
We care. I mean, we were brutally attacked in a massacre 2 years ago, and 2 years later, the response of the world to our women getting raped, our children getting beheaded, peaceful communities in the south of the country getting attacked out of the blue, unprovoked. And 2 years later, Hamas can look at themselves and say, look, terrorism works. And so if 75% of the countries in the UN agree with that, then what can we say? The world has turned upside down.
But you've missed a key stage in all of this. The last 2 years that have passed since the 7th of October have seen tens of thousands, we don't have an exact number or a precise number, of people, many of them women and children, killed in Gaza. And you know, there's a huge amount of sympathy for human suffering. I mean, any human would feel that when they see the scenes we see on our screens. So isn't that rather an important factor in all of this?
I have a lot of sympathy for those people, and I have sympathy because they're being governed by a brutal, genocidal, jihadi terrorist group that won't surrender a war they have obviously lost. And the reason why they won't surrender is because they don't care about their people. In fact, they use their people. They use them as human shields. They hide in the tunnels while people are left there. They steal their food. And so people can want self-determination for the Palestinian people. I do. But how confusing is it when essentially nobody has made it a condition of this Palestinian state, the removal of Hamas? And let me say more, the Arab League have called for the removal of Hamas because the Arab League knows how toxic Hamas is, how toxic the Muslim Brotherhood is. And yet these countries who have become puppets to the jihadists in their own countries have not made conditions on the Palestinians. They haven't said to the Palestinians, renounce violence. They haven't said to the Palestinians, renounce the right of return. They haven't made any conditions on people who, in their charter, say they want to kill all the Jews and take over the entire country. So to me, this is warped. I don't really take a lot of credence in the UN, which is essentially made up, the majority of the UN are non-democratic countries that are being whitewashed by some semi-democratic process. So I don't really give a lot of credence to the UN, whose workers, whose employees were involved in the massacre on October 7th, whose employees have actually held terrorists captive in Gaza. I don't take them that seriously. And maybe, who knows, the result of this announcement is that the Palestinians will no longer be considered refugees.
You make a lot of points there. One of them, you say you are in favour of a two-state solution. Your Prime Minister, isn't he? He's just said there won't be a
I never said I was in favour. I never said I was in favour of a two-state solution, no. I said I'm in favour of the self-determination of the Palestinian people.
How do they have that without a state?
Well, I come from Gibraltar, and Gibraltar has self-determination without a state. Puerto Rico has self-determination without a state. There's many places around the world that have self-determination. Otherwise, they can govern themselves. Let me tell you what self-determination without a state looks like. Gaza, which was turned into a terrorist base. The West Bank, Judea and Samaria, which is run by Mahmoud Abbas, where 94% of the West Bank Palestinians are living under Palestinian Authority rule. And what have they done with it? Again, they have been corrupt, they have stolen from their own people, and 100,000 Palestinians have to come into Israel every single day to work because they haven't developed their own economy. That's what two Palestinian states looks like, one in Gaza and one in the West Bank. So we need a state when people are not renouncing violence, not renouncing terrorism. And in fact, a state of Palestine, so-called, would only be another Islamic Republic of Iran enclave in the middle of our country. We can't afford to lose one war, and we can't afford to arm people or allow the arming of people who have stated again and again and have acted again and again to kill us.
Another point you make is, in your first statement, is that, countries haven't called for the dismantling of Hamas, but a number of the countries that have called for a Palestinian state to be recognized have in fact said Hamas must have no part in that country's future governance. So that's a point worth bearing in mind, isn't it?
Well, you can say it, but what are they doing to help us get rid of Hamas?
Well, I mean, what's
Instead of making empty
left
statements,
of Hamas? What's left of Hamas? Because we've been told...
Unfortunately, there's still a lot left of Hamas. They still are hiding in the tunnels. There's at least 10, 15,000 troops left in Gaza City. Unfortunately, there's still a lot left of Hamas. And because they don't care about their own people, they won't surrender a war they've already lost.
Let's take this back to the UK. You're a British passport holder, and we've heard the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, say the following: in the face of the growing horrors in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, he says, we have neither. What is your reaction to that statement and to his decision to recognize a Palestinian state?
Well, unfortunately, it's performative and detrimental. It's performative because the UN has actually no jurisdiction to create a state. You know, the Algerians announced a Palestinian state in the 70s, and Spain, amongst other countries, announced it last year. Did anything change? Of course not. And so, again, it's performative, and in my opinion, it's performative to quell the jihadists and the Marxists in his own government and his own country. Unfortunately, Keir Starmer has become the Chamberlain of our day. Instead of standing strong against terrorism, Churchill was also considered a warmonger when he kept saying Hitler will not be appeased. The Islamic fundamentalism and Islamic fundamentalists will not be appeased. And what Keir Starmer has done is give them a prize today.
But it's not just the British. I mean, and I know you don't recognise the legitimacy, and you've said that the UN doesn't have any credence. I mean, the UK is an old ally of Israel. One could even argue it's one of the architects of the creation of Israel. And so too is France, Sykes-Picot. And the French president says that granting the Palestinians a state means they will no longer be pushed towards Hamas. That's the French argument. These are your allies. What do you say to France?
Well, we had the same argument in 2005 when we left the Gaza Strip, and that could have been the pilot of a Palestinian state. And the people elected Hamas. In the West Bank, if Mahmoud Abbas had elections tomorrow, the people would elect Hamas. So his premise is completely erroneous. He is completely oblivious to the actual realities of our region, the realities of Islamic fundamentalism. And to me, he's also an appeaser. But France has always been an appeaser. I'm much more disappointed with the UK, who, because we're involved in the creation of the State of Israel, should know better.
President Macron went further. He said these Israeli operations have led to so many civilian casualties and victims. They've completely destroyed the image and the credibility of Israel, not just in the region, but in public opinion everywhere. What do you say to that?
Well, I'll quote the wonderful late and great Golda Meir, where she said, I'd rather lose sympathy and be alive than have sympathy and be dead.
But do you not, I mean, when you see the pictures, and I sometimes wonder whether you're seeing the same things in Israel that the rest of the world is seeing on their television screens. I mean, when you see emaciated children, and then, we speak to someone in Israel and say, oh, it's all made up. Or, when you see people, trying to get food and then being shot at in the process, and then we get told, no, they're shooting each other. I mean, I don't understand how you can be seeing something in such a different way from the rest of the world. And that seems to be the problem here.
Yeah, the problem really is that the world has fallen hook, line, and sinker, thanks to Qatari money, for an incredibly sophisticated propaganda campaign. You talk about emaciated children. Every single one of those emaciated children in the pictures had a congenital illness and are now being treated in hospitals in Europe. If there really was hunger, why are they taking children who are sick? and not their quite well-fed looking mothers. And so the whole thing is a sham. And the world has fallen for it for two reasons. One is because the mainstream media has gone along with it because of the woke culture, because of Qatari dollars. Unfortunately. And the second is because people always like to think the worst of the Jews. Unfortunately, it's something that has gone on for thousands of years. It's easy to attack the Jews. And in the old days, the Jew was an individual. Today, the Jew is a collective in the state of Israel. And unfortunately, anti-Semitism is always a very light sleeper. And we're seeing it actually wake up now.
Yeah, but we've been talking about France and the UK, two countries that we agree helped create the state of Israel. What would they have? What's their interest in bashing the Jewish people?
Oh, come on. They've got the largest population of Islamists in Europe. Britain has
You're saying Keir Starmer's an Islamist?
Yeah, no. Keir Starmer is appeasing the Islamists and the Marxists in his party and his country. Britain has 40,000 Islamists, suspected terrorists on their lists. And instead of facing the issues he has with the open borders, instead of facing the people of Britain who are saying to him, enough is enough, you're prioritizing these people over us. And this is what he does to appease his own Marxists and Islamists in his country. That's Keir Starmer. And Macron has an even bigger problem. These are two people trying to cling on to power who are using and playing dangerously local politics into international politics, a conflict they know nothing about. Let me tell you that the moment that they said they were going to declare the Palestinian state is the moment Hamas walked away from the negotiations. How do I know that? Because President Trump and Ambassador Huckabee both, and Marco Rubio both confirmed that that was the case. And so they're not helping, they're making everything worse.
We've spoken to lots of medics on this channel. We've spoken to doctors who've served on the front line in terrifying conditions in hospitals across the Gaza Strip, including one who actually went to school with me, Professor Nick Maynard, who's a highly credible witness, and we tend to believe our doctors when we go and see to them, so I have no reason to think he'd be lying and making things up about your country or about what's happening in Gaza. I mean, these doctors have told us, a number of them, very consistent accounts of what they've seen, and they go against what you're telling me now, that the emaciated children are somehow already ill, there's nothing wrong with them, everyone's got plenty to eat. Is there a chance, you say everyone else has been spun a yarn by Hamas, but is there a chance you've been spun a yarn?
Absolutely not, because I know that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has given out 200 million meals. I know that the tons of food going into Gaza are more than they ever were before October 7th. If Hamas is stealing the food, is that also Israel's fault? That's the problem, that instead of the focus being on a genocidal terrorist group that has in their charter the genocide of Jews, everybody's focusing on the only democracy in the Middle East. Am I saying that war is not difficult? Absolutely not. War is horrible. War is horrible. It's cruel. Nobody should be in a war. Israel has never started any wars. Every war that we've ever fought has been started by either non-state actors, terrorists, or the countries around Israel. So what does that tell you? Every single country that has wanted peace with Israel has found peace with Israel. Jordan, Egypt, the UAE, Morocco, Bahrain, every single country that wants peace has found peace with us. You think we don't want peace? Do you think I want my children in the front lines instead of going to university like everybody else? Israel is a beautiful, productive country with people who love life. We don't want to be fighting a war. We don't want to be occupying another people. We just want to live in peace.
Yeah, but that would
have a long-term plan, and the long-term plan is being obstructed by this pesky little country of Jews called Israel. And we're the front line of a civilizational struggle. And the saddest thing is that everybody, like in Munich in 1938, everybody fell for Hitler. Today, everybody is falling for the jihadi terrorists who have spun a yard to the entire world. Yes, indeed.
Okay, but I mean, let's spare a thought for people who've lived for 3 or 4 generations with no state, living in exile, whose daily life, if they haven't gone into exile, has meant special permits, roadblocks, fences, home demolitions,
Why is that?
blockades,
Why is that?
refugee
And why is
travel.
that?
Well, because they don't have a
Why is
state. And we're saying that,
Why
you
don't
know...
they have a state?
Good
Why
question.
don't they have a state?
Where's the state?
Why don't they have a state?
Well, the
I'll tell you why
British
they
and
don't
the
have a
French have
state.
tried granting them one. They've
Yes,
recognised
they
one.
have
Where
tried.
is it?
1 second. 1947, they were offered a state. Israel said yes. They said no. Two-state solution. Back in Oslo, Arafat was offered 97% of the West Bank and half of Jerusalem, and everything else he wanted, including land swaps, so that he would have 100% of the land he said he wanted. And he said no. And Hamas started a brutal terrorist campaign in the streets of my city, Jerusalem, where Jews and Arabs alike were killed, slaughtered in cafes and in restaurants. You see, the problem is that people don't seem to understand that this is not a territorial conflict. The problem with this conflict is not that there isn't a Palestinian state, is that there's a Jewish state. That the Palestinian leadership, I'm not speaking for all the Palestinian people because I've got plenty of friends who hate their leadership. They know what the leadership have done to their cause. The Palestinian leadership has never accepted living side by side with Israel. And let me tell you when we will have peace with the Palestinians, the minute they accept that we're not going anywhere, that's when we'll have peace.
OK, we've got a big week for diplomacy. This is my last question for you. I mean, lots is going to be happening at the UN this week. We can expect President Trump to take the podium tomorrow, your Prime Minister on Friday. How do you think history is going to look back on this week?
History is going to look back on the countries that declared a Palestinian state like they look back on Chamberlain and France and Italy after the Munich Agreement. Instead of standing strong against Islamic fundamentalism, they've given a prize for Islamic fundamentalism. Believe me, I want the Palestinian people to live in peace and prosperity. But when you have the leadership that is telling them, just hang on a little bit, we're going to get rid and kill all the Jews. That's the lie they've been spun. And that's the ethos they've grown up with. And that's the education that they've absorbed since they're born. That is why history will look very unfavorably on these countries that did not see the threat right in front of their faces. We are now the only thing standing between the world being taken over by Islamic brutal caliphate and freedom. OK, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, thank you again.